What is good, beautiful people? This is your boy, Tone DeShields II from Chalk It Up Sports, where no matter we win or if we lose, we just got to charge it to the game. As you guys can see, I have another special guest on the channel, the one, the only, Gate City Sports, but formerly known as Steve Heitter. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well, man. I'm doing well. Happy about this offseason. I see a lot of improvement.
Definitely. It's so funny. I was telling you offline that I'm more of the passionate, the emotional type when it comes to the sports thing. I give a lot of high energy, and I always lock in on your content to give me that analytical, that logical, that rational perspective. That basically that objective perspective, right? But you know what? Because we haven't spoken since we haven't officially spoken or done content together since I was on your channel. I think you were doing like an interview series, correct?
Yeah. It was probably about a year ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, how do you have a very interesting approach to dissecting the game. Where did that come from? Like, why do you dissect the game the way you do?
It's going to be an interesting story, Tone, to be honest with you, man. I started off being a little hesitant towards school. I'm going to be honest with you. I grew up in Newcastle, Delaware, just outside of Wilmington, Delaware, close to the Dell Memorial Bridge, actually in the town of Newcastle. To be honest with you, man, I was raised by my stepfather. He came in when I was about 5 years old, and I was smart. I just didn't like school. And he caught on real quick that I was playing my grandmother and my mom and getting them to do my homework and stuff for me. So what he would do is he would sit me down and he would make me like read the newspaper, the sports section in particular to him. And then from doing that and like learning how to actually read, how to put sentences together, things like that, I actually started buying, I think it was like Saturday or Sundays back in the day. I mean, we're talking late 80s, early 90s. They used to come out with the stat sheets, and you could actually record the stats. So they would have like the week and they would have like the year. So I started like keeping these logbooks, and I would just record everything. And then I started collecting baseball cards. So I kind of came up in that era where baseball card collection was like a huge deal. And I would use those to record stats and stuff and start tracking like league wide. And, I grew up when like Beckett and then like, Athlon Sports and all those things were like really popular publications during the time. So like I was avid in that stuff, man, which kind of led me into being this guy that looked at the game differently, like tracked everything. And then I got lucky, just like anyone, Tone. I got real lucky, man. I was in the military. I got bored and I said, I love football. I love baseball. I want to coach. Like I miss it. I miss the environment. I want to be around it again. So I started off coaching Pop Warner football. And while I was coaching Pop Warner football, I had a friend that was like, hey, man, you want to help me set up these drills? And I said, yeah, what you mean? He said, we're going to go down to Virginia Beach and we're going to set up these drills for this prospect. He's doing like special team stuff, all this stuff to get him prepped. Like he's got like a lot of, attention on him. He's about to be some major recruit. Well, long story short, Tone, what this guy didn't realize was we were setting up drills for Percy Harvin.
What?
It's hilarious that this man had no clue who this young man was. And I was like, yo,
the Gators, Percy Harvin.
Yeah, I'm like, yo, like this is like crazy high level talented dude, man. Like he's like one of the biggest recruits in the country right now.
And you knew he was Percy Harvin at that time.
I knew who he was. I was trying not to be fanboy. I knew who he was, but the people I was working with had no clue. And I thought it was kind of funny. But I got involved around the game around some people that really understood it, could really see it, could teach me technique. I wasn't this guy when I played the game. Believe me, I was not able to diagnose coverage and do the things I could do today, like I could do, when I was that young. Like, honestly, man, I played in the late 90s. You're talking about a lot of run-centered offenses, a lot of two-back sets. I was used a lot as an option quarterback. It wasn't the same, man. Like, I don't think that I would be able to play underneath the stresses, at least the quarterback position. I don't know if I could play it in today's game just because of how crazy and how drastically different it is, unless I was in maybe a spread system or still an option-based system. But, I mean, you got high school teams. They're running some pretty complex stuff now. So, yeah, man, I just, got around the right minds, started off at a young age to where one of my deficiencies kind of became, strength. I ain't gonna lie, Tone. I was that kid that would be in the class, teachers talking about whatever the teacher's talking about. Man, I'm thinking about the matchup on Sunday. Like, wow. I am so far away from whatever it is they're talking about. Like, I was the classic, I guess what you would call a daydreamer, And I really didn't take my education seriously until I got out of the military, went back to college. that second trip around the college, I started kind of taking it a little bit more seriously. But yeah, man, I mean, just I got around the right people, man, and that helped a lot.
Man, your story, so many ups and downs, so many trials and tribulations. But the biggest thing I take away from it is you gained self-awareness and you knew who you were pretty early. Like you knew that you weren't really into school. You knew you weren't intelligent. You knew you probably understood everything that they were talking about, but you could care less. But at the same time, you had that self-awareness to say, you know what? There's going to come a time where I need to use, I guess, my power for good, right? That analytical mind, that you gain, through your stepfather. And
Yep.
I don't take that, I don't take stuff like that for granted. Like, people are putting in your life for a very specific reason. People, I'm a firm believer that God is timely. And you can make an argument your stepfather, intervening when he did was very, very timely, and it set the stage for you to be who you are now and create the platform you created with Gate City Sports Media. Really quickly, how did you come up with this idea, Gate City Sports? Where does even the name Gate City comes from?
I live in Greensboro, North Carolina currently. Like I
Okay.
said, I grew up just outside of Wilmington, Delaware, 30 minutes outside of Philly. I moved here, I want to say in like 96. I was still somewhat young. I was like right around 8th grade or so. And I moved to North Carolina, and I moved to Raleigh. But, after I went into the military, came back, I did a couple of years. I was at NC State. And I was like, you know what? My wife had started, taking up studies out here in Greensboro at UNCG. And I was like, I could probably, get involved in like a graduate program or something out there. So I'm going to check it out. So we ended up moving out here, and I liked it so much, I bought a house. Long story short, Greensboro's nickname is called the Gate City because there's so many there's so many different highways and intersections that come through here. It used to be called like the Gateway to the West. So it's called the Gate City. So when I kind of started it up, it really wasn't as unique as it probably sounds, and I didn't really think that it was as like, I didn't think that I would create this brand where everybody would even forget that my name is Steven and they would just call me Gate. Because, I mean, I'll be honest, man, I've been in the grocery store and had folks be, Gate. And I'm like,
what's that feeling like? Because I haven't been spotted out yet. You know what I mean? So what's that feeling like to just be doing, your daily activities and someone just says, hey, yo, Gate City, yo, my man, like I love your content. Like, what is that feeling like? What goes through your mind when those things happen?
To begin with, if any guys ever catch me in public, man, like I'm eternally grateful. I mean, grateful that you guys would even care to even come up to me and be like, yo, big fan of what you do, and even want to talk football with me. Like, I'm a dude that I'll sit there and talk to you for an hour about football, right, knowing I got somewhere to be 30 minutes ago. That don't faze me, man. I'll definitely do that. But in saying that, I'll admit that I'm a little bit more of an introvert. I've always had a lot of friends and stuff like that, but I'm not like a big crowd type. So like some of those moments like make me feel a little like, oh crap, like I don't know what to do, man. It's not like I'm much better when it's more personalized. And I've had situations like, I DoorDash and stuff. Like I'll do DoorDashes. And, man, I was trying to save up some money so I could buy some new equipment to try to upgrade the channel. So I was like doing a lot of DoorDashes over last summer. Like, I mean, I was DoorDashing like crazy, to be honest with you, Tone. And I go into this IHOP that's off of Battleground Avenue. It's in Greensboro, right? And I'm thinking nobody's going to recognize me. And there's this young man. He's probably high school age, maybe just graduated, somewhere in that age group. And he's like staring at me. And I'm like, yo, why the hell is this dude staring at me? And finally the guy, like, he notices like it's getting kind of awkward. So he's like, hey, I got to ask you something. I'm like, hey, shoot. And he's like, yo, do you go by Gate? I'm like, yo, my name's Steve. It's nice to meet you. Like, yeah, I go by Gate City. He's like, is there any way I could take a picture with you? And I'm like, hey, man, if you think I'm worth taking a picture with, like, knock yourself out. But here's the thing, Tone. This is where it got embarrassing. This is where it gets embarrassing. When one person does that, everybody looks. And now I got the cooks and stuff from IHOP come out to take a picture with me.
They probably don't know who you are. They probably don't know what you do.
No clue. They had no clue. They had no clue who I was. Some of them, I know they didn't know who I was. I had one younger girl. She was probably, 19, 20. She was one of the waitresses at the IHOP. And like, she comes up and she's like, can I take a picture with you? And I'm like, yeah, sure. So like, they go to take the picture and I lean into her and I'm like, yo, you don't even know who I am, do you? And she's like, no, but everybody else taking pictures. You got to be famous. I'm like, not even in the slightest.
Oh my God, YouTube famous, right?
Yeah, I was just laughing. I'm like, nah, not even close. Not even close, guys. But I was like, I'm more than glad to take pictures with y'all. And everyone's like, "Yeah, what do you do? What do you do?" And I'm like, "I have a sports content creation channel on YouTube, you know." And I had a lot of people that were like, "Yo, man, like I checked, I saw you out in town, and then like we talked a little bit. And I checked out your channel, like I don't even like the Eagles, but I like your content." And I'm like, "It's all good."
Because you learn something from like the way you digest the game, right? It's like even if you're not a fan, there are a lot of Cowboys fans that follow Philly 500, right? I had them on
Yep.
yesterday, and there was so many Cowboys fans in the chat. But what I noticed is that when you're a great communicator, when you're a great orator, someone who's very capable of explaining a point or just
Uh-huh.
teaching, a lot of people gravitate towards that. A lot of people gravitate to to your ability to dissect the game. And that's one of the reasons why I brought you on, because I firmly believe that your approach to the game, you dissect the game in a way that's very unique and very different from the way I dissect the game. So just jumping right into it, when the Eagles brought in James Bradberry, what was your dissection of that? I watched your initial reaction video, and you seemed pretty excited, but you didn't get too much into the details. I know you're going to probably drop more content and how he's going to pair up with Darius Slay, and I'm looking forward to that. But what from an analytical perspective, I guess from a nuance and scheme perspective, what does James Bradberry bring to the Eagles that maybe people aren't really discussing?
Yeah, so I'm always a little careful here, Tone, because I have made some predictions in the past that came true, and like it went beyond what I predicted. And I'll give you a very good one because he just signed with the Giants. I predicted that Michael Jacquet would make this Philadelphia Eagles roster. I never predicted he would be starting by the end of the season. Like I just looked at the underlying talent, the fact that he was a new convert from wide receiver to corner. He had the physical attributes. I'm like, I think there's something there to develop. And this is a guy that I think makes a ton of sense at the back end of your roster. Never thought in a million years he would ever start. I say that because I think a lot of people understand that I'm a huge James Bradberry guy. I mean, I've been wanting James Bradberry on this Eagles team since I started this YouTube channel back in 2019. And I had the opportunity of watching him play for the Carolina Panthers. It was before I started pirating every game. So the local channels, you know what I mean? Like you kind of watch what's on there. And yeah, I got to see him play a lot. I'm like, man, like this dude he's like a ferocious competitor. That's what I loved about him. Like the dude competes. Now I will say there's been some things pop up, and I think it's true, Tone, to be honest. I don't think that he always gives his best effort in run in run support as compared to like really going up against those dog wide receivers that can get kind of bully in the red zone. I think that's where he shines, is going up against those type of guys. But I will say his tackling can kind of wane in terms of the effort a little bit. He's kind of, I know we like to make fun of Diggs. Diggs is a guy that turn around, make a play on the ball. He'll get up there. He'll knock passes away. He's got those pass defense numbers as well. But just like Diggs, Diggs is prone to get beat. So can Bradberry. Bradberry will gamble and lose. And I don't think he's a man coverage system type player. Like, to me, he is purely a zone. You want him in a zone heavy scheme. Like, no matter where you play, you got to play both. You got to play a little bit of man. You know what I mean? So there's going to be those times where he's got to play man coverage. But this is a very, very good zone, system cornerback. 33-inch arm reach. I mean, dude's just, he's not the fastest dude. I mean, I would say that he's a little faster than Rasul Douglas. He's a little faster than Jalen Mills. But, I mean, he's not like Darius Slay type speed. He's not Jalen Ramsey level speed. He doesn't have that kind of like movement abilities. You know what I mean? It's more of a physical brand. Like someone was talking about earlier about Sheldon Brown. Taller version.
Interesting.
Taller, longer version of Sheldon Brown.
But Sheldon Brown, you would say Sheldon Brown was better in run. Sheldon Brown was very physical to me.
Short. Yes, he was definitely a more willing participant in the run game, Sheldon Brown. But Sheldon Brown was that red zone. To be fair, Jalen Mills was too. But was that red zone defender, although I still remember those early Giant games in the 2000s with Plexico Burress and that comeback, man. That comeback, and it was like, what was that, like 2000? It was like 2006 or something like, but they had that. Yeah, it was like, man, yeah. But yeah. I mean, like, I think he's going to be a good player for the Eagles. I think he's an incredible scheme fit for what we're going to do here. Now, look, am I drumming it up a little bit just to agitate Dallas Cowboy fans? Absolutely. I know those dudes that are content creators. I know it's driving them crazy right now, but hey, it's fun, man. it's fun. I like to get on their nerves a little bit with it. But yeah, I mean, look, is he better than Steven Nelson? I think so. I think this is a definite upgrade over Steve Nelson. Now, I mean, is this Jalen Ramsey walking on the other side here of Darius Slay? No, of course not. It's not that level of signing, but I do think this is one of the better tandems that we will see in the NFL this upcoming season.
So would you say he's a top 32 corner? And I say 32 because, the 32 teams in the NFL,
sure.
right? There's 64, top corner. There's 64 corners that start, on both boundaries, and, excluding the nickel. So would you consider him a top 32 corner?
Yeah. So it's a very good question. I would say somewhere between 28 and 40. He's in that range of being a very quality number one cornerback on the back end of those teams that maybe don't have those bona fide players. But I could also see arguments of just saying he's a really, really good number two. I tend to think that if you were talking about him 2 or 3 years ago, that's top 20. He's a top 20 guy 2 or 3 years ago. Now, at his best, is he a top 20 guy? Yes. But I'm talking about consistency. I probably put him around that 20, 25, 30 range, somewhere in that area personally.
Okay. I like that. Now, it's interesting because prior to getting Bradbury, I had this thought where as though even if we don't go get a veteran corner to pair with Darius Slay or someone who was at least serviceable like we did with Steven Nelson last year, I still had some level of faith in I still had some level of faith in the competition that was brewing in the cornerback room. When you think about all the guys that we already had on the roster, such as Kerry Vincent Jr., Tay Gowan, Zeke McPherson, Mac McCain, Craig James, all those guys. Do you think about the guys we brought in, Josh Jobe and Mario Goodrich? I think Josh Blackwell. Those DBs. I still had some level of faith in the competition that was brewing. Right. So now we have Darius Slay and James Bradberry, and then you have Devonta Maddox, arguably the best trio we've had in this city in the past 10, 15 years. Yeah. When you think about it from that perspective, what does the presence of all three of those guys, even especially James Bradberry, what is his presence, Darius Slay, Devonta Maddox, what does that do for the younger guys like Tay Gowan, Zach McPherson, and all the guys I've mentioned?
I mean, there's always the argument that when you got 2 second-year players in Tay Gowan and Zach McPherson, then you got 3 dudes that you named, Blackwell, going into Mario Goodrich, going into Josh Jobe. Those are undrafted rookie free agents. So the aspect of just knowing what it's like to be a pro, how professionals approach the game, and that goes for all 3 of our starters. Devonta Maddox is now in his second contract. You got James Bradberry, who's beyond, he's kind of past that point of the second contract because we're post Giants now, if you will. And then you got Darius Slay, who's clearly a veteran as well, over 30. So, seeing the way that these guys approach the game, you got 2 dudes that have been Pro Bowlers on the outside. You got one guy on the inside that arguably should have been one because I thought he had one heck of a season last year, and Devonta Maddox. Seeing the way they approach the game, I think it's important. Now, I will say that I kind of agree a little bit with what Tannehill said, although it's not a popular take, that it's not the job of the players to coach other players. I kind of agree.
I agree with that, by the way. You
just don't say it.
Yeah, you just don't say it. Exactly. You just don't say it, but everyone knows, the way I look at that is, why would I prepare someone to take my job?
Exactly.
In any respect, you know what I mean? Any job,
Mm-hmm.
And, these companies these days, they have no problem finding someone younger than you that they can pay less than you. And that may even know a little bit less, but they're willing to take that risk and coach them up.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing is I kind of agree with the statement he was saying. And that's kind of the way I look at it with our outside corners. But what I will say is that there's film room. And then getting those guys to walk you through the film room and tell you tendencies. Hey, I played this dude 100 times. This is what this guy likes to do. When you see this foot forward, this is what they're going to do. When this foot is back and the weight's on the back foot, this is normally an indicator of what they're going to do. Like, these guys know the tendencies of players. And then when you have guys like James Bradberry and you have guys like Darius Slay who are really, really experienced, Darius Slay is, incredible in terms of his ability to play man and zone. There's not a lot of dudes that can do both at the level he can. These 2 guys in particular, when it comes to zone coverage, I think their pattern matching ability. Pattern matching just basically means, okay, I see the concept coming at me. I know the route tree. I know the route concept, right? I know what they're trying to do here. This is where I need to do to take this away.
Interesting.
Those two guys' ability to do that can rub off on other players. That can kind of help foster an intellect and intelligence about how you play route combinations and things like that. I do think that is very invaluable. Now, it also helps having who I think is a very, very good secondary coach. And then you got a defensive coordinator that's got a pretty good track record in Jonathan Gannon and also developing corners. I mean, everyone keeps talking about James Bradberry having a down season. So did Xavier Rhodes. Until he got to Gannon.
Interesting. Now, it's funny because people are always down on a player that always wears the Eagles uniform. The moment they get to Philly, all of a sudden people forget their track record and forget what they've done. You've heard about AJ Brown. All of a sudden he doesn't have elite traits. And we're going to get into that. But and we could finish off with this. When it comes to James Bradberry, James Bradberry, his presence instantly makes the defense better. That you can make your argument the Philadelphia Eagles defense has no holes. The safety position may be the weakest of them all, but it's still serviceable. If I had to grade the safety position, it'd probably be B- level, maybe C+. And that's still serviceable. Every team has holes. What kind of pressure is on Jonathan Gannon right now, knowing the defense has been reconstructed to his liking? Because last year, let's be totally honest, the narrative was he didn't have the players he needed to succeed. That was the constant narrative, right? He didn't. He was forcing guys to sort of play out of their original position or out of their original role. Like he had Fletcher Cox, I guess dropping back in coverage in various situations, right? So what kind of pressure is on Jonathan Gannon right now, especially after the move Howie Roseman has made in the offseason?
I love this question. I don't want to go into a deep dive on this one. Let me just say hey to what's up to everybody in the chat here. Richie, what's good, man? Lil, what's going on, man? Elijah, Lucas, I Shine.
Definitely.
Eagles Realist. Richie, Queasy, what's up, man? Ivan. Drew, what's good, man? Raphael, what's good? Cameron, what's good, man? Ryan, what's up, buddy? Who else is in here? Jock Talk, what's good, man? How's everybody doing?
Yep, Ryan Rowe, a lot of them people, man. Yeah. Lucas Hallman, Elijah Earl, Lil, like it's a lot of people, man. Like a lot of people rock with you, bro. Ivan Mims is my guy. Lucas Hallman is my guy, man. Like shout out to those guys, man. Make sure you guys smash that like button. We are live right now. I have Gate City Sports Media, aka Steve Heitter, in the building. He is showing mad love to the channel. Make sure you guys go like the live stream. Also, make sure you guys subscribe to Gate City Sports. He is arguably one of the smartest men on YouTube when it comes to dissecting the game. I know you'll probably say, don't flatter you, but I'm being completely honest, my man. Like a lot of people say that. I recommend you all the time to people. Say, listen, if you want to digest the game analytically, if you want to objective view the game, if you want to learn something about the game, go watch my man Gate City, bro.
Appreciate you, Ton. I appreciate you. Let me dive down into this question you just asked me because I think this is a very important one. I think there are 5 things on the Eagles that are unknown and they have to improve. There are 5 areas. The first thing is the offensive side of the ball, and it has to do with the coaching. And I'm talking about from the game plan situation, how we build the scheme, how we build the system, so what it's going to look like, and then how we game plan for opponents. And that comes down to, in my opinion, the head coach, what he does here. That comes down to Shane Steichen, who, hey, he's worked with some young quarterbacks. He doesn't have a ton of experience. He had more experience than Sirianni, but he doesn't have a ton of experience calling plays. And he's been accused of being a little passive, to be quite honest. And then you got Kevin Patullo, who's probably the most experienced of these guys, and he's the passing game coordinator. I think before we talk about anything offensively related, those 3 dudes have important storylines and to do with that entire conversation, to be quite honest. The second thing is what you just asked me, which is about Jonathan Gannon. Hey, you got a year of experience under your belt. You know what system, you know what scheme you want to run. You know that you lack the personnel to completely run it. But I will also say there were times where I thought your play calling was bad. To be quite honest, I just thought that you had the wrong play calls in there. And can you fix that now that you have a year of experience of seeing these things and what you do? The third storyline is Jalen Hurts. Is Jalen Hurts going to take that leap? Is he going to become that guy that's really sets his franchise up for a tremendous amount of success? Because if he becomes the dude, if he's it, boy, we have an arsenal of picks to build around him. Absolutely. I mean, this team could be talented for and competitive for quite some time with Jalen Hurts. If you don't have to waste that those picks on another quarterback, you got it. You got something real special here. The fourth storyline that I think has to be talked about is something that you can never control, and that's injuries. Can't control injuries.
Yeah.
I know that we hired a new guy coming over from the Rams last season who did, changed around a lot of the things that we do here. Seems to have gotten the head coach to buy into the concept of how to manage players. Seems to have, it seems to have extended the career of Jason Kelce as a result of that. We'll see. I mean, they got to keep it up, man, because if you start having pivotal dudes fall off, everything looks good in the preseason until you see what's going on once you line up to play a team and who's available. And the last part of that is that injuries will happen. I don't care who you are, you're going to suffer an injury somewhere. We know it's going to happen eventually. Development. That fifth part to me is development. I thought one of the major things that got Doug Peterson in trouble here in Philadelphia is they failed to develop certain positions.
Absolutely.
And I think that was a big, major issue. And if you're going to have injuries, if you're talking about the youth of this roster and how many guys we have under the age of 25, then you also have to count in that you've got all these dudes that you said are great developers of talent that you brought onto the coaching staff, brought in. You got to develop it. Those 5 things to me are of vital importance to how this team makes a deep playoff run, in my opinion. So Jonathan Gannon, to me, what he can do defensively, how he can mix and match and use pieces, it will be one of the major storylines of this season because we needed a nose tackle. We know we needed a nose tackle because we had a very public argument on national television during the draft the season prior because we wanted Aleem McNeil, the scouting department did, Tom Donahue and those dudes, they wanted Aleem McNeil because they wanted that piece in the middle of the defense. Howie made a gamble and said we could trade back and still get that guy. We traded back. Detroit leapfrogged us and took Aleem McNeil. And then kudos to Howie because say what you want, but his fallback plan to get Milton Williams as a 3-tech and a guy that can play outside as a 5-tech defensive end, that was a heck of a plan B because that dude turned out to be a pretty good ball player, to be quite honest. So we know that the nose tackle, taking Jordan Davis, trading forward to go get him, making him, a top 15 pick, picked him at 13. We know that we must have rated 12 to 14 dudes as like, these are like purely the 12 to 14 best players in this draft. And there's a big drop off past that. And we went up there to go get that guy. So we prioritized the nose tackle position. Clearly that's going to have a lot to do with what Gannon can do because the less amount of bodies he has to commit to stopping the run and rushing the passer, the more he can drop into coverage. And I think that is a big part of it, Tony, to be quite honest, is not having to always rock your safeties into the box to basically play the run. Not having to overcommit your linebackers to playing the run. Because let's be honest, man, there were times I was watching film to where the defensive line just wasn't synced up with the linebackers. And it looked like our linebackers had their feet in quicksand. Because, They weren't even moving until the linemen were on them at the second level. And it was like, I don't understand the scheme. What is the point of the scheme? This makes no sense to me.
So would that be more so on the players' lack of understanding, or would that be more on Jonathan Gannon's inability to teach or implement the scheme?
I think it's both. I think it's a little bit of both. I do think that there were some issues with personnel, to be quite honest. Eric Wilson did not fit what they were asking him to do. And, I know he's a coverage guy, but he was a really, really bad run defender. And the fact that I don't think they had the right guy at nose tackle, because Javon Hargrave he's talented. He's a really talented player. But he's a far better to be that 3-tech that can pass rush than be that nose tackle that's going to play the run. It's not a strength. And I think we suffered from that because we couldn't stop the run. It put us in compromising second and third downs, which then allowed, we're playing these crazy off coverages to where we can't get our linebackers out there to cover the under areas. So our corners are backed off in those deeper zones. It was just like playing catch for the quarterback and receivers.
Right.
So nobody's around them for 10 yards. And I think the whole thing unraveled because of that. Right.
So out of curiosity, just for those who don't understand, you mentioned, 3 technique, 5-tech,
Sure.
What are the differences? And outside of 3-tech and 5-tech, which others are there? Like, can you break down the techniques of alignment? Because, offensive linemen and defensive linemen, they essentially, operate off the same techniques, but, obviously offensive linemen play a different role, right? And defensive linemen play a different role. So break down the technique of the defensive line.
Yeah, no problem. So when you hear someone like me and we say 3 technique, we're basically what we're saying is the outside shoulder of the guard. So 3 techniques are normally going to be aligned on the outside shoulder of any guard. So if you look and you see, the shoulder that is closer towards, so if you're looking at shoulders that are closer towards the center, then that's called a 2-eye. But shoulders that are on the outside part of the center, like going towards the tackle, that's a 3 technique. If your head's up over the guard, then that's a 2 technique. So you got, if you lay it out logistically, you got, say I'm the guard, my face is the guard, guys. If you're right up over me, that's a 2 technique. If you're on the inside, sorry, I got to remember which way to go here because of the mirror image here, guys. If you're going towards the center, that's 2-eye. If you're on the outside here, that's 3 technique. 5 technique just means on the outside shoulder of a tackle. 7 technique would be heads up over top of the tight end. Wide 9 would be outside of the tight end, right? So when you hear those, that's what they mean. And then you get into like, zero shade and 0 techniques. Those are techniques that a nose tackle would play. So it's all those little things kind of brought together.
So basically, the higher the number, the further you are away from the ball, the further you are away from the center, essentially.
Sure, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
The higher the number, the further the distance it will be from the actual center. Yeah.
Got it. So, you mentioned having a guy like Jordan Davis, who's that prototypical nose tackle, a guy who's a mammoth of a man. I had the opportunity to meet him in person, and he is as advertised. The dude is huge. You know what I mean? Like the dude just blocks out the sun. But real humble dude. And I was telling him, I said, look, my man, we coming to get you in Philly. You got to get here. He said, look, I'm waiting on y'all. I'm ready to ball out. You know what I'm saying? So it just happened how we made the move, and what were your overall thoughts of this draft class, in real time? Because, we saw on day one, you got Jordan Davis, and then you made a move to get AJ Brown, through a trade. And then day 2, you managed to get your center of the future and Cam Jurgens. Not everyone was in love with that pick at the time. And then Howie rebounded by stealing Nakobe in that 3rd round. And then on day 3, you got Karan Johnson, a linebacker who in my opinion is a bullet train, has a very high potential just because of his athletics, being able to run a 4.40, someone who was a linebacker in college, but more so thrived as that pass rusher on the edge. Then you got, Grant Calcaterra, a tight end who's a great vertical tight end, a great possession tight end, maybe not the sharpest blocking, but a very offensive, a very ball savvy tight end. So what were your thoughts on the draft class in general and how we navigated the board?
So, what's funny, Tone, is I made my mock draft, and you can never really predict who they're going to pick. You know what I mean? Like, you're trying to address who you think would be scheme fits and stuff like that. And in my mock draft, I made 4 trades. And I based this upon historic precedent of what I've seen Howie Roseman do. And I've had some people come after me. They were like, oh, you're playing Madden. And I'm trying to explain to them, like, look, I'm not even a dude that really – I haven't played Madden since I was like 19. It's been a long time since I played Madden. But I'm like, no, man, I do everything based upon precedent. Like, the precedent is the season prior, Howie Roseman made 4 trades. There's a trend here. He likes to move and maneuver the board. So I love the fact that we saw some aggressiveness mixed in with pick accumulation. I know that some people really criticize, like, having to give away all those day 3 picks to maneuver ourselves early in the board. The thing I'll say is this: give me proven talent over long shots. That's what I'll say. I know that we've had a great run of long shots. Jason Kelce was a 6th round pick. Great long shot we took there. Quez Watkins was a 6th round pick. Great long shot we took there. No doubt about it. Jalen Mills, I know we like to talk crap about Jalen Mills as a city here, but truth be told, for a 7th round pick, pretty good pick. Pretty good pick, right? Jordan Mailata, 7th round pick. I mean, we definitely have hit on those late round picks. There's no doubt about it. With that said, though, man, I'd much rather have AJ Brown, and I think Jordan Davis, to get to your original question here, is I think he's a very good scheme fit for what Gannon wants to do. Now, I made some statements to where I said, I'm not saying this young man can or cannot rush the passer. I don't know. Georgia's defense was very complex. It's really hard to break down because you have to understand the way that they use their defensive linemen and the way their pressure packages work. And basically, a lot of what they asked those interior defensive linemen to do was to hold up the blockers to get those linebackers free. The Nakobe Deans, the Quay Walkers, those guys to actually get free and to attack. I believe, was it not Timmons? What was his name? There's another guy out there too who was pretty good for them at linebacker. That's pretty much what they asked him to do. So it's kind of hard to judge it. Athletically, it's there. He's very athletically gifted. So I don't know if he's going to be a pass rusher. It does concern me that if you take a guy inside the top 20 picks as an interior defensive lineman and he doesn't have tremendous pass rush abilities, of course, that's a little bit of a concern. But just given the nature of how important nose tackle is to this overall success of this defense, the ability to completely shut down that run and stop that from being a concern where you don't need to overcommit guys into the box to do it, and how it frees up the rest of the defense. While I personally would have had reservations if I didn't know a guy could rush the passer, I think the way that Gannon looked at it is the importance to the actual overall health of the defense and what this one position group can do for everybody else and how it can make life easier. So now you get into the argument of, could you have found that in later rounds? I'm just going to say, from my perspective, this was a very good nose tackle draft class. There's no doubt about it. But Jordan Davis is on a whole nother level than those other dudes. So it's kind of hard. You know what I mean? Like there's definitely some internal debates. And, I brought up Kyron Johnson. When we selected Kyron Johnson, we made those picks to get extra picks in the 6th and 7th rounds. And then we come up on the board and we're like 10 picks away. You have like Barno. There was 3. It was like Barno. There was another guy. It was a dude from Cincinnati was still available that we brought in for a pre-draft workout. I can't think of his name right now, guys. But Barno from like Virginia Tech was still available. The dude from Cincinnati was still available. And Kyron Johnson was available. And the Eagles traded up 10 spots to go get Kyron Johnson with those other 2 dudes still on the board. It's very likely one of those 3 guys would have been there 10 picks later. So that told me it's interesting to track, because I'm definitely going to track, Barno and Kyron Johnson and these dudes and just see Darian Beavers is who I was thinking, guys. It's going to be interesting to track those 3 guys and see how their careers end up, because the Eagles said, okay, we know these 3 guys are on the board. And of these 3 dudes, Kyron Johnson is who we prefer. That's a big statement, right? I mean, that's a really big statement to know that you only had so many picks left in this draft. You're going to give one of them away because you think this dude is such a good fit for what you want, and you think the underlying athleticism is so talented, even though we still have a few of these dudes on the board that fit the role of that Sam linebacker inside of in Gannon's system. It's really a rush linebacker. I mean, it's an interesting storyline. I'm not saying they're right or wrong, chat. I'm just saying it's something to track and follow. That, we took him over Beavers, and then we took him over Barno. So I mean,
could it be his athletic traits? Like, could it be?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Very, very unique traits. Because again, like, you look at how he unfortunately he didn't get invited to the combine, but he had a pro day, and he went to a school that's not really known for their football. So that's probably another reason why people didn't see him as high. He's very raw, but I watched his first press conference, and I paid close attention to. But one of the things that stood out to me the most was how he talked about his game, how he talked about his approach, and the language he was using, and how he dissected himself. It was almost like he was self-scout. It was almost like he was self-scouting himself the entire time.
Sure.
And that means a lot to me. What are your thoughts on Kyron Johnson in terms of what his ceiling could potentially be? Because, like I mentioned, he has these athletic traits that are kind of undeniable. Kind of how Davion Taylor had these athletic traits that were undeniable. Yet, I think Davion Taylor's instincts may not be as high as Kyron Johnson's. But Davion Taylor made some strides. Just overall, as a matter of fact, the linebacker position, the room, the guys we've added. What's your thoughts on the linebacker room and how we've morphed it into like these athletic, extremely lateral sideline to sideline, I guess like bullets. We have a lot of athleticism on or in the linebacker room. You think about Kazir White, you think about Davion Taylor, who's very athletic, Kyron Johnson, and Nakobe Dean. TJ Edwards still is a pretty athletic guy. Probably one of the more instinctual guys we have because of his experience. But give me your analysis of the linebacker room and how it's been constructed.
It's really interesting because of the overall athleticism that's been added there. And it's just the moving components of how we utilize our linebackers, right? Because of Gannon's system, you have to now differentiate between what is an on the ball versus an off the ball linebacker. Mm-hmm. And, kind of how that ties in, because now you got guys like Patrick Johnson, who's technically a linebacker, but he's an on the ball linebacker. You got Kyron Johnson, who technically could be on or off ball, but I do think that they envision him on ball as a Sam linebacker. And then you have, Hassan Reddick, who's also an on the ball with off the ball experience as well. So, we had these kind of strange, ways of utilizing certain players. And then you look at the pure off ball guys. What does this do for Davion Taylor? I mean, what do we know about Davion Taylor? What do we know about his future and all that kind of stuff? And, this is a guy that when he was in games, I thought he was really showing, but they didn't use him as a pass rusher at all, really, which was a little shocking to see the underlying numbers on that, because I think the athleticism is there to be tremendous in that role. But he was definitely a much more advanced run defender last season than what I remembered him being his rookie year, although he didn't play too much. The concern is he's been injured 2 straight years in a row, and I think that's definitely a bit of an issue. And then we look at what we did with Kaiser White. Kaiser White, man, I really loved his film coming from the Chargers. He was out playing those dudes, man. They had some draft picks that were higher draft picks than him that they wanted to get on the field, and they weren't out playing them, to be quite honest. Wow. A lot of Charger fans were not happy to see him leave. And I think the Eagles got an absolute steal in Kaiser White. I don't know if you can truly say that Kaiser White is a Will or a Mike in this system. I think it could be both. I think as a Mike, he's definitely a coverage guy. He's not a run defender. As a Mike in this system, as a Will, more of the possibility. He's a converted safety. He played kind of that roving safety role, which is a box player anyway. So, I mean, I definitely have faith that he can do that. But he's an interesting one. Nakobe Dean, I think, is going to be envisioned as the Mike, but I don't think that he's limited to just being a Mike. I think you can play him as a Will in the system. I honestly think he has the underlying athleticism and the ability to shoot, and get through and read and diagnose plays quick enough to do that. Because that's when you're talking about the Will, you're talking about backside pursuit most of the time. Sam is going to be play side. You're holding, you're setting the edge and trying to steer that running game back inside, while the Will linebacker is going to chase backside. That's backside pursuit. And I think Nakobe Dean could do both. But he's also kind of got that heat-sinking missile, I'm not as scared to expose my body, and he'll go after guys. I mean, I love Nakobe Dean's film, to be quite honest. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I had him rated higher than the young man from Utah, but Devin Lloyd. Those two guys, to me, they were the best 2 linebackers in this draft class. And both of these guys are going to be, I think, really good NFL players. What I love about Nakobe Dean is it's not just his play on the field. It's everything. It's the approach. It's the attitude. I know that he's got a fire lit under him right now, Tone. I know he wants it. He's hungry. He knows what just got lost. He knows it.
Millions.
Yeah, he knows it. He just, man, the minute he took the mic and talked, I was like, oh, this dude was made for Philly. I mean, I don't know how this happened. I don't know how we ended up with this young man falling right to us in the 3rd round. It's crazy to me. I get that he had some concerns. I get that he's shorter. I get all those concerns. I get it. I understand he's under 6 foot. I get that he's hovering around 230 pounds, and he probably by season end is not 230. He's probably more 220, 225-ish. But the bottom line is, man, is when you turn the film on, you see production. You see a guy that was calling the defense and aligning it. I'm excited for that guy. I'm excited for that guy, Tone. I think he's going to be a difference.
I can tell. I can see it.
And what's crazy is I think TJ Edwards is probably the most underrated player on the team.
Absolutely.
All he does is produce. He can't cover, right? Except for when you put him in coverage, he's our highest graded freaking coverage linebacker. And I get there's nuance.
He has improved in that regard. He has improved.
And I get there's nuance. He's a really good zone pass defender. there's some nuance to him being locked up in man situations, manning up on somebody. And that's why they went with more athletically gifted guys to do that. But nonetheless, man, TJ Edwards is a phenomenal. He's just honestly, he's a phenomenal run stopper. He can play in those zone systems as a coverage guy. And oh, by the way, when he finally gets his opportunities to rush the passer, he was one of the highest win rates on the team. I think he had like him and TJ Edwards have like ridiculous win rates as blitzers.
Wow.
So yeah, TJ Edwards. I'm sorry, I didn't mean TJ Edwards and Alex Singleton. Those two guys had really good win rates when they were blitzing last season. So I mean, I love what is going on inside the linebacker room right now. I honestly think that we went from having one of the biggest question marks, one of the least talented groups in the NFL, and I think it like there's like 2 or 3 teams that are hovering around with Philly where we just didn't put any investment there, and then there's like the other 29 teams. You know what I mean? Like we went from being in that situation to where I think at minimal we're talking 14 to 18, and that's at minimal. Wow. So I think we're at least in the middle of the pack at minimal. Year one with these guys. And I think that if everything lines up the way that we're thinking, Tone, this could be a top 10 linebacking core, which is something we have not had in Philadelphia. I can't even remember. It has to be the early Andy Reid days with Jim Johnson. It would have to be back during that period since I felt that good, when we had the Carlos Emmons and the Trotters and those guys. It would have to go back to to that time frame because this linebacking core, man, like I'm waiting. I want to see this defense on the film because if Gannon can hold up his end of the bargain, I think this is a good squad, man, defensively. I really do. And I'm not taking shots at Dallas because I think Dallas is better than people think defensively. To be quite honest, I hate to give them their just due. Because
Dan Quinn changed that defense, we'll be honest.
Yeah.
Dan Quinn changed them for the better.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I like to troll them more than I like to give them compliments. But they do. I mean, look. Anthony Brown had a really good season as a corner for them. I'm just going to be honest. He did. I'm a little iffy on Diggs. I think Diggs got, he'll turn around and play the ball in the air, right? He will definitely get in there and knock balls away from receivers. He'll definitely be a guy that can defend the passes. You also got to live with the amount of times he's going to get beat. You know what I mean? Like, he's still top, it's still a team that's going to they're going to get the ball. Simply put, they're going to create turnovers. They are. I think that their pass rush took a big hit, though, with Hardy leaving. I know that they want to say, like, well, Dante Fowler Jr., if you go back to a couple of years ago. Yeah, but that wasn't with Quinn. It wasn't with Quinn, to be fair. And, he's only really had that 1 year. Outside of that 1 year, it really hasn't been that great. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, they have some young guys that I think are pretty decent. They have some dudes that produce some good win rates. And I'll be honest, like Dorrance Armstrong and a few of these guys, like I was tracking them the other day and just kind of looking over and seeing what we have in comparison between each other as squads. I'll be honest, like, they got some young guys like Dorrance Armstrong, Terrell Basham. He played some quality, reps for them. Chauncey Golston has some quality reps for them, but those dudes are all like 3, 4s, and 5s. They're not main reserve guys. They're not, you know what I mean? They're none of those things.
Yeah. It's really interesting, right? Because the theme of this defense, if you ask me, and then we're going to transition to the offensive side of the ball. But the theme of this defense, if you ask me, is versatility, right? And that seems to be exactly what was missing last year. We had a lot of guys that did one thing pretty well, and then when you move them outside of that arena, they kind of struggled, and that's why we were able to get exposed. Yeah. The Philadelphia Eagles were one of the worst teams at covering tight ends. These days tight ends are dynamic, they're athletic. They can they're basically linebackers with wide receiver skills. You know what I mean? So the versatility of this defense is just jumping off the page, right? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're going to see some multiple fronts. I don't know how often we're going to see true 30 fronts, 3 down linemen. But I think you'll see some hybrid stuff to where, you'll get a nose tackle. You'll get a guy that'll be lined up in like a 4-eye, maybe 2 4-eyes, or you'll get, a 3 tech and a 5 tech on the opposite side. I think you're going to see some stuff like that. Then you're going to see, a guy like Josh Sweat stood up as a joker. I think you're going to see Hassan Reddick playing that rush linebacker type role. The question will be, though, is with a guy like Karan Johnson, if he really starts showing an ability to really rush the passer and really starts picking up the install of the defense. That's a dude that you can play opposite sides with Hassan Reddick and truly have two rush linebackers surrounded by a 30 front, 3 down linemen. So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what they do. I still think that we're more inclined to see odd fronts from the 50 front. So basically what we saw last year where you take that Sam linebacker and then basically that 5 technique has somebody playing outside of him. And then I think that's where guys like Milton Williams come into play because he's not going to be unfamiliar with somebody playing outside of him. I think Brandon Graham is comfortable with somebody playing outside of him. We'll have to see what goes on with Derek Barnett, man. I know my guy, Philly 500, like he doesn't even want to think of the name, but we'll have to see. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to really make of Derek Barnett, man.
Yeah, man.
I've given him faith before and it just didn't work out. So like now I'm kind of to that point to where I really, I don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah, I mean, but you have more penalties than sacks. That's a problem, right? So, I mean, it's kind of hard to even, put any kind of stock, or make any kind of investment in that Derek Barnett stock, right? But jumping to the other side of the ball, the offensive side of the ball, Howie Roseman has just been he's made moves that you have to respect. Again, we talked about drafting Cam Jurgens, the Jason Kelce replacement, and then you trade for AJ Brown. What were your initial thoughts on AJ Brown and what his impact will do for, that wide receiver room and also just for Jalen Hurts' career? Because I've always said you can't really expect Jalen Hurts or really gauge him properly if you don't put the pieces around him to at least say, you know what, it's sink or swim now. Because my whole mindset was I want to enter this season without even thinking about Howie Roseman, what he did or didn't do. I want to enter this offseason whereas though Howie Roseman's hands are washed clean. He filled up the roster with talent. Now, coaches, players, do y'all thing. So, on the offense side of the ball, what are some of your thoughts on what Howie Roseman has done?
I think you hit the nail on the head about A.J. Brown and what he's going to do for Jalen Hurts and why you have to bring in someone like that. But, man, I was so pleasantly shocked. I mean, I made a video where I talked about being demonetized. And truthfully, I got limited ads placed on me because of that because I was just in shock that it happened. I was one of those people that thought that it was just jokes. I thought it was two friends joking around. I was like, yeah, I'm not going to read too much into this, guys. Like, they do this every offseason. Friends get together. They start working out together. They start playing around on Twitter and on Instagram and stuff like that or on, whatever social platform. And then everybody is like, oh, snap, they're going to make a trade. And it's like, I've seen this too many times. I'm not buying it. And to be fair, Howie's original target, from what I understand, was actually Deebo Samuels. And it just didn't work out. But you know what? A.J. Brown in Eagles green? Come on, man.
It looks sick.
Come on, man.
It looks sick.
Yeah, like this guy in the past 2 seasons, okay, in 2020, he was the number 2 yards per route run wide receiver in the entire NFL. Why that's important, guys, is yards per route run takes the amount of routes that you're running as a wide receiver, takes your total yardage, and then basically calculates how productive you are. In 2020, he was the second highest productive, in terms of production among receivers. And in 2021, he was the 5th. It's a top 5 receiver, man. Any way you shake this. You put a top 5 wide receiver into the receiving room, along with a dude that has the ability to develop into something spectacular in Devonta Smith. Add in, you got a guy that's coming along in Quez Watkins that has the big play element written all over him. Like, this guy is a real vertical threat. Oh, man, I love this wide receiver room right now. I really do. Zach Pascal's definitely a big drop down from those dudes. Don't get me wrong, but he's hard-nosed. He's a hard worker. I think he's got a chip on his shoulder. I think he's another dude who's got a chip on his shoulder that, like, hey, man, everybody thinks I can't play. Give me my opportunities, and I'm going to show you.
Well, in all fairness, right, he's thrived in that wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 role. I believe 2 out of the 3 years when he was with the Colts, he managed to put up over 600 yards in the limited role he had. So he was able to be an option on offense, correct?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And that's going to be, man, I mean, when you really break down the way this roster looks, you got 3 top 50 guys in terms of, they were floating around that area in terms of your yards per route run. They're all kind of floating around that area, but I know we got 2 top 40 guys in Devonta Smith and then, of course, in A.J. Brown, who's top 5. So, I mean, you got these highly productive players on the outside now. By the way, in terms of tight ends, in terms of yards per route run, Dallas Goedert was the most productive tight end. So the pieces are there. Like Nick's got to do some things. Steichen's got to do some things. Patullo, who's our passing game coordinator, he's got to do some things. And Jalen's got to execute, no doubt about it. But the potential is there. The potential is there for a crazy, crazy productive season. And I'm hoping we don't get too crazy with it. To be honest, Tone, I hope that Nick can kind of pace himself to understand that the running game is still important and to make sure you don't deviate too far away from that. But I know there's going to be an expansion upon the passing game. All the signs seem pretty clear.
And you know what? It's funny you say that because, Nick Sirianni, he's a very animated guy, right? You can tell even in week 1 going into week 2, week 3, he wants to get that ball in the air. But when you think about not just bringing in a top 5 wide receiver, according to the production, right? Mm-hmm. When you think about the way A.J. Brown plays the game, the scheme he comes from, being such a physical wide receiver, playing in a run-heavy offense, being asked to block a lot as well, that he fits our offense. He fits the roster like a glove. So is it fair to say that because of A.J. Brown's traits and how he's approached the game, on other teams as well, like the Titans, and how the fact that he's been asked to block as well, do you think that will, I guess you'll say, kind of curb Nick Sirianni's enthusiasm and when it comes to just trying to air it out all the time and try to utilize this guy in every capacity?
Yeah, absolutely. He comes from a system where they were run dominant. I think it's going to help. You got a guy like Zach Pascal who can hold his own as well. Devonta Smith's a little light. He'll give you full effort, but it's not really his forte. It's not a strong suit. Quest Watkins will give you
effort. But you're right.
Yeah, he'll give you the effort as well. But I will say, you got Jack Stahl, you got Dallas Goedert, you got A.J. Brown, you got Zach Pascal. You got some things you could do in 12 personnel to really help you out. Now, I will warn, I would say that Stahl is a much better pass protection, pass pro, blocking tight end than he is as a run blocker. That's really the young man that we had him here. We signed him as an undrafted rookie free agent. He left and went to the Colts and then came back. I can't think of his name right now. It's slipping my mind, but he's really a really phenomenal run blocking tight end. Yeah.
You're talking about, is his last name Togai?
Togia. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking of. Yeah. Yeah, he's a pretty good run blocking tight end, to be honest. So, definitely. You'll definitely see some things, and I think it helps when you got a guy that can go across the middle of the field, right? A guy who can run in breaking routes, and A.J. Brown. I think it's a tremendous help when you're trying to sell, play action, when you're trying to sell RPOs, when you're trying to do those things. Like, you do have to be mindful of just giving A.J. Brown a free release into the middle, into an in-breaking route. Because now you got to worry about the running back. You got to worry about Jalen Hurts. And you also don't just want A.J. Brown running free. So, it definitely, I think it's going to help him out a little bit. And I know people are going to hate this because I'm like, man, I just don't want to see any more of these RPOs. I don't think the RPOs are just going to disappear from the system. Unfortunately, I think those are here to stay a little bit. I think that, they know what they were doing. They're taking these calculated risks. But yeah, I expect to see a lot more of a competent offense. I think we'll be, when I say offense, I mean passing offense, because Jalen Hurts was electric, with this running back core and with this offensive line in the running game. So we'll see. We'll see if that can be expanded upon, because if you can start making those headways, if you can start moving forward, if Jalen Hurts starts showing that, hey, man, I'm getting comfortable here. I'm really able to read the leverage of these players now, these corners. I know the coverage they're in. I know what they're trying to do, and I know how to manipulate this. You got something special, man. You got something special that can be brewing here offensively.
No, you're definitely on to something, man. And, the wide receiver room is definitely going to be better because of A.J. Brown's presence. He's going to demand excellence from everyone. And then Devonta Smith. Devonta Smith was on the island last year. I know we had Quest Watkins, but, they're night and day in my opinion. Devonta Smith, you think about the way the wide receiver room is built just from the top, just from the top 3 guys, right? You have A.J. Brown, your physical, big body wide receiver who has a catch radius like Stretch Armstrong, very physical, can run damn near any route, and is an extreme red zone threat. And then you go down to Devonta Smith, who's more so like your technician, your pure route runner, a guy whose footwork is tremendous. He can catch all those sideline, those nuanced catches, hands like glue, can break away. And then you have Quez Watkins, your barn burner, the guy that can take the top off the defense. Then you got Zach Pascal, your utility guy, the guy that you can move around and run blocking, and maybe you use him in pass block and blocking when it comes to screens. You may run forward Devonta Smith, right? But the versatility is all over this team, not just on the defense side of the ball. The versatility is in the wide receiver room, and then you go down to the running back room. It's really interesting what they're doing there as well, because they're bringing a guy like Kennedy Brooks. I know the chat wants to get your thoughts on him, and we're going to definitely dive into that really quickly. But also, what's your thoughts on the way the running back room is constructed right now, and also how it influences Miles Sanders' contract situation?
That is honestly a really good question, and I don't know how they're going to view certain aspects of the running back room right now, just because I think that they're in a strange place to where that power running game, it did a lot for the Eagles, right? Having those guys that are one-cut runners, get downhill. I know that they think that Boston Scott can clearly play that role, but they also went out there and they signed some dudes like Kennedy Brooks and those guys that are a little bit more of one-cut runners. I will say Kennedy Brooks has more explosion to him than I think people realize. I think he does have the ability to beat you if you're not careful. With that said, though, man, like Miles Sanders is really the key here. Kenneth Gainwell's really wanting that opportunity. And it's going to come down to, can Miles Sanders keep him off the field?
Right.
Miles is beat up a little bit.
And real quick, it's interesting because Kenny Gainwell was arguably at best your number 3, number 4 wide receiver on any given Sunday, just because of Boston Scott and Jordan Howard being there. But when you think about what Kenny Gainwell did in the limited action that he had, he was able to give you over 500 yards from scrimmage and production and still give you 6 touchdowns. That production is wishful thinking for a 4th round, 5th round pick, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And he was, he was a great find. He was a great pickup. I think if he had played in the 2020 season, there's no chance that he's there where we found him. To be quite honest, I think we were very fortunate in the way that we were able to pick him up, because I do think that if he had been exposed, got more exposure and had more film to give out the scouts, he's a dude you're not getting in the 5th round probably. He's probably going to go a round or so earlier than that. But, I mean, they got some guys waiting in the wings. Kennedy Brooks, he is more of a contact balance guy. I wouldn't call him a pure contact balance back, but he's got the size. You look at runs of 10-plus yards. I think he finished tied for 21st with 30-some last year. I have it written down in one of these books somewhere.
How would you define a contact balance running back? How would you define that?
See, that's the thing is how do you filter for that? Are you looking at yards after first contact? I mean, how are you defining it? To me, I look for a few things. Number one, you look for the guys that seek out contact, because it's the number one indicator when you're watching the film. Is this a guy who's looking to run around or run through? To me, that's the easiest way of looking at it. Miles Sanders looks to run around. Miles Sanders is always looking for the home run. I would not call Miles Sanders a contact balance back, but I do think that Miles Sanders, over the duration of his career, got a little bit better at being a one-cut guy, being a dude that will go up and get you those couple of yards. But I think he's always looking for the bigger opportunities, to where certain guys, Tyler Algier, Hassan Haskins from this past draft class, those dudes are looking to run through you, not around you. That's the biggest way of doing it. You can filter by things like yards, yards after contact. But I will say that some dudes are just elusive, and if they make the first guy miss, it's going to really create a lot of numbers that way. So you got to then deviate between what is an elusive guy that's just making the first guy miss. Arm tackle misses him, and now he's gone for 90 yards on you. And what's the guy that's just running through people? So you kind of have to look at that. Then you got to go to the film and see where it lines up. But the other thing you can look at is take everything into context when you're looking at the underlying analytics, right? So yards after contact. Look at their runs of 10 yards. Then you want to look at first downs gained. Look at touchdown runs. You want to look at different things like that. And then go to the film and consult and see why those analytics are lining up the way they are, to see, what it is that's creating those things. Hassan Haskins is not a guy that you would be overly impressed with his yards after contact, his YCO markers. But to be honest, watch his film. And he was a hard guy. He was a very difficult young man to bring down. He can run. He's physical. So, I mean, you get a guy like Kennedy Brooks. I think he's a one-cut runner. I definitely think he's more of a more of a contact bounce back than like a Miles Sanders is.
Okay.
I think he's built to endure NFL contact, but he's had his issues at Oklahoma staying healthy too, to be fair. With that said, but I mean, pretty good undrafted rookie free agent, man. I think this was a really good draft class at running back, and I think that made a lot of dudes that in other draft classes would have absolutely been draftable players, would have had draftable grades on them, fall out of the draft. So I think Kennedy Brooks is one of those guys that, Oklahoma probably has some form of relationship with Jalen Hurts, so that probably didn't hurt the Eagles. The Eagles aren't ridiculously deep at running back, I think the real question is when you look at trying to get guys to stick on the roster, what role can they play for you on special teams, right? Because if you're not a guy that's going to contribute to the overall offense early, you got to stick on special teams. And I think that's, is this a guy that you protect on the practice squad and you use them for some, a few game call-ups, you know what I mean? Like the modern NFL, there's a lot of ways of carrying guys on your roster now.
Wow. So, it was interesting. Like you broke down these players in so many different ways. And I've always wondered, for someone who's so analytically aware as yourself, right? How do you balance the analytics with the eye test? Because I feel that we're clearly in this analytic era. Guys are using team scouts. They're using analytics to essentially define how good a player is or how good he'll be in the long term. They're using trends, like you said, precedents and things of that nature. How do you balance what you learn about a player analytically and then just what you see on the field?
I always say this: analytics and film should always marry. They should always match. But the thing is numbers never lie. And if you feel like you've been lied to by the numbers, it means your interpretation lied to you, not the numbers. And that's where you got to be careful. Understand the numbers you're looking at, the film you're looking at, and if something doesn't seem right, what happened with the interpretation? Something in interpretation is not right. So dead giveaway, right, is you look at, I don't know, let's say we look at a stat like, yards per route run. And, I see this guy and he's got, I don't know, let's say he's got a yards per route run marker of, say, let's make it controversial because you want to be above 2. So let's say he's got like 2.2. I got one guy who had, somewhat issues with utilization. He just wasn't utilized that much. But say he averaged on, like 40 yards a game, right? I got another guy that I'm looking at this, and he's got a few games where he popped off. And he got, a couple 100-yard games on there. But then he's got like, 3 games where he, got shut out, didn't get any catches, no yardage, right? And he's got like 6 games where he's held underneath 50 yards receiving. Those numbers tell you the same thing, right? But your interpretation should be changing based upon what you see from the film. You know what I mean? You have to filter further into it. And it's happened to me a few times. I'll give you a player that I think scouts might have missed on. And either they're going to be right or I'm going to be wrong in the interpretation. All right. The young man from Clemson, the Clemson wide receiver. I'm trying to think of his name right now. He signed with the Chiefs.
You're talking about Sky Moore?
No, not Sky Moore. Not Sky Moore. He signed with the Chiefs as an undrafted rookie free agent. Man, he had like a really good freshman and sophomore year too. Let me see. I'll look it up real quick.
I got you. I'm going to find out for you right now. His name is,
Dustin Ross.
Justin Ross. Yep. Yeah. Justin Ross.
So Justin Ross.
I heard about him. A lot of people were saying teams missed on him.
Yeah. Thank you, Cameron. Appreciate you, Eagles realist. Justin Ross. This is a guy that has some complex injury stuff going on. Had some issues with vertebrae stuff where he had to have surgery, all this kind of stuff. Did not have a good 2021 season. Missed 2020 because of all this stuff. Go back and look at his 18 and 19 film. There's some Keenan Allen likability to him. I'm not saying he'll be Keenan Allen, but the way he separates, the way he sets defenders up, it reminds me of Keenan Allen, And he's a guy that I think that in the right situation with the right opportunity, and having Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes as pretty good opportunity and situation, in my opinion. It's just a matter of, can you get yourself forward on the roster? That part I don't know. You know what I mean? I know that they've minus Tyreek Hill from their system. Sammy Watkins has been gone from that system for a couple of years now. I think they lost a couple other guys too. I think the Bears signed one of their players too or something. One of their
they lost a few guys. Right now they have Juju Smith-Schuster, McCole Hardman, Marquez.
Byron Pringle's gone.
Yeah, they have Valdez Scantley, Josh Gordon still, Darius Fountain, Sky Moore. You know, it's deep. I'm not gonna lie. Like, Justin Ross got a lot of weeds to crawl through.
Mm-hmm. If he's a guy that can somehow find his way to the field and get that opportunity, I think he's better than what scouts think, man. I really do. I think it's one of those situations to where I'm not too sure that every team's medical department signed off on them, their sports and nutrition department. I'm not too sure all of them signed off. Man, it's there, though, man. I'm telling you, on film, I thought I saw it a few times, man.
Wow, man.
I was like,
that's interesting, man, because, you know, it's always tough, right? When a guy has an injury history that's undeniable, but the talent, you see it, you know that he can, if he can just keep it tight and stay well, he can be a steal. And, you know, and that's how people look at the Nakobe Dean situation. Yeah, like, he had the pec injuries or whatever, but the talent is undeniable. Like, what do you do in situations like that where it's like how do you even, you know, what do you do in situations where, like, yeah, a guy has these injuries or whatever, but man, if we can just get him on a routine that just works, you know, like, what do you think goes through the minds of, you know, these scouts or these coaches or these health professionals, you know, for these teams in that regard?
You know, you're trying to evaluate the medical histories, and it's something I can't do. You know, it's outside my realm. My realm is football. It's not the medical side of things. I don't know I have no clue what is on that medical record. And there might be a really good reason why 32 teams said no in the draft, because I don't think it was based upon projection of talent. I think it had to be some other concerns outside of that just said, this is not a dude we're going to invest draft capital in. But, man, when you go back to him playing with T. Higgins, Tone, boy, he was a really good compliment. He really was, man. He was good. He's a good player. I don't know. I mean, we'll see. You know, it's one of those things to where I have an opinion on him. I don't know that – I think he's got the right coach and the right quarterback. I don't know the opportunity will be before him to catch on to the roster. I mean, I think he might have to really wait his turn if he ends up staying with Kansas City. It's a tough one, man. Like, that one in particular is tough. And let's go into more controversy. I know we're all in love with Howie Roseman, so it seems like a good time we can bring this up, and it's not too controversial anymore. DK Metcalf.
Very good point. Very good point. They said he have a broken back or something. They had a bad back.
Yeah, something with his neck, I think, or something. Yeah, something happened with his neck, I think.
I can't tell.
I have no clue either. I couldn't tell you the exact nature of what the red flag was, but I mean, we know that I don't think teams removed him completely from their draft board, but you know, for him to be available where Seattle got him, you know, it's like that was a lot of teams that said no twice.
Even Seattle said no twice, and then they finally went and got him.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of those things where it's like, man, like, you know, it's really hard to judge injury grades, and the Eagles have been risky. Go back last year, we took a risk with a guy that is playing some really good football for us now, Landon Dickerson.
Big facts. That is a fact. He was healthy for them. He was healthy the entire season, if you ask me. Mm-hmm. I think he missed, one game, I think?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Something, I think you're about right, somewhere in that area. But, I mean, you know, go Nakobe Dean this year.
Great point. And that may speak to what you said about the guy we brought in from the Rams, you know, change the way we approach, you know, how we keep these guys healthy, man. Maybe we got Landon Dickerson at the perfect time. You know, I want to get your thoughts. On this schedule that we have, and as it relates to rather Jalen Hurts' progression and how good we anticipate him being, because this schedule couldn't have been laid out any better. Now, sure, you have 4 games that you're going to be playing on short weeks.
Mhm.
We lead the league in terms of that. There's a handful of games. It's the first Washington matchup, the Houston matchup, the Colts matchup, and then the final Dallas matchup. We're going to be beating those teams on the road on short weeks, which is not really the most favorable situation to be in. But overall, when you think about this schedule, and then you also think about Jalen Hurts and his progression as a quarterback, what kind of pressure is on this young man to get it done?
You know, I guess it depends upon your perspective on it. I would argue that there's a ton of pressure on him right now in terms of being the guy in Philadelphia. Now, do I think that this season and what the Eagles do or don't decide to do ultimately has anything to do with if another team might try to go down that road? Who knows? That's really hard to predict. But I definitely think that I think it's both ways, Tone. Right? Like on one way, no matter if he had AJ Brown here, no matter if we rebuilt the defense the way we did or not, the expectations were probably going to be the same in terms of what you wanted to see from them, right? So adding those dudes, I mean, sure, from the fan base, might we have higher expectations? Sure. But just look around the league. Josh Allen. Oh, yeah, Josh Allen. He doesn't have Josh Allen's arm. Yeah, no kidding. I agree.
Right.
Josh Allen couldn't hit the broadside of a barn until they went out there and they got Diggs.
That's Stephon Diggs, exactly.
Yeah, they went out there and they got Diggs, and then they drafted Gabriel Davis. Dak Prescott, what they do for him in 2018. They went out there and they traded for Amari Cooper, and then earlier in 2018 they drafted, Michael Gallup. So I mean, you look at other quarterbacks and the way they've, the help they've received and the steps and the leaps that they've made. You know what I mean? Like, it helps.
No, you're right. You're right. And, I know you discussed, Jalen Hurts' development. He's been working with the guy, Tom House.
Tom House.
Tom House, excuse me. And he's known for working with guys like Drew Brees and, Tom Brady. Just from an improvement perspective, from a progression perspective, from a technical perspective, right? Because I know you've worked with young quarterbacks, when you were coaching, I believe, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So when you think about Jalen Hurts' deficiencies, everything we saw last season, what do you anticipate him improving on? Or I guess rather, I would much rather ask, will his improvements be enough to secure a long-term future in Philadelphia? And what should we be looking for? I know a lot of people bring up numbers, right? I brought up numbers myself. I've brought up, okay, I would love to see him throw for about 4,000 passing yards, especially in this new NFL, the weapons we have, about 25 plus touchdowns. 4,000 passing yards is about 230, 240 yards a game, 235 to be exact, I believe. But that's very possible in the 17-game season. So, just what are your thoughts on everything I've essentially, encapsulated when it comes to Jalen Hurts and his improvement working with Tom House and, from his technique and all that on those things?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important to do what he's doing in terms of seeking out and trying to diagnose what the underlying issues are. I love the fact that he's working on things that are, as he termed it, holistic. So whole approach to the aspect of playing quarterback play. I think that what he's trying to do is go over the film, understand it, and read leverage better. Like I said, you get any professional quarterback, Tone, and you put them in, a film room on Monday, they understand what happened. They get it. They understand. It's a matter of like, I had Justin Arth on, who's a guy who's professional quarterback. Right now he's trying to work out for some USFL teams and some, CFL teams and stuff like that. Justin explained it. One of the things that guys like Tom Brady and Drew Brees and those guys do is they would run down every single scenario in their head the night before. So they would go over the game plan, and they would go over every single way that a coverage, could approach your game plan, a defense, what they could do. And he went over every one of those things, and he just ran it through. So that way, when you got into the game, you knew what you saw. You knew what leverage you needed to see. and you got the ball out. And to me, that will be of the utmost importance for Jalen Hurts. It's about, as a quarterback, you know what's being called. You know the route combinations, okay? You've built chemistry with these receivers you have. You know, you have trust in them. Both sides, you know, they trust you. You trust them to be where they're supposed to be. Now it's a matter of, I hit my rhythm step. I'm looking at this, and I think that I got faith that my guy can win this. And I don't think that corner has the right leverage to get in there and take this ball away or break it up. So I'm going to make that executive decision. I'm going to be decisive with that decision, and I'm throwing the ball. If I don't love it and I don't love the positioning and I think the defender's got a beat on this guy, then I'm going to do what they call a gather step, hitch up, and I'm going to look to that second read. You know, if you got to go to your third read, which you do see, I mean, it happens, don't get me wrong, guys, but ideally you don't want to get to too many. I think people mistake that you don't really want to get to too many 3 reads because it means you got to kind of dig deep and the plays being very, very prolonged. But if you got to get to a third read, then you have to reset your feet. You get into that third read. I think with Jalen, it's got to be like clockwork. I trust my guys. They trust me. They're where they're supposed to be. I see the leverage I want to see. I trust my guy to win this ball. Decisive decision, it's out. Okay, it's not there. I'm gathering. I'm getting to that hitch. I'm getting to my second read. Oh, it's not there. I'm resetting my feet. I'm looking to the third read. Crap, it's not there. You know what? Now I'm going to break this defense down and I'm running. That's it. That's you know, I know that that's a lot, but that's really what it entails. That's what it is, right? He's focusing on rest, recovery, okay? He's working on things such as the mental aspects of playing the game. So that entails things such as, you know, watching film, working on technique and honing that in, you know, getting that field work in there. He's doing all those things, right? He's taking that holistic approach to trying to improve himself as a quarterback. In terms of my gut instinct, I do think it's going to be there, Tone. I can't predict if a guy's going to win a Super Bowl or not because let's be real, Dan Marino never won a Super Bowl.
That's true. One of the more talented quarterbacks to ever play this game.
Yeah, so I can't predict something like that. I have no clue. But, man, I just think with A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Quez Watkins, Zach Pascal, Dallas Goedert, the running backs that are behind him with Miles Sanders and Kenneth Gamewell and Boston Scott, I think he's going to take the jump, man. I think that we're going to see an improved player. And then just knowing the fact that you got a second-year full-time starter, but a third-year player.
Interesting.
You know, I expect there to be advancements to be made. I think that he's going to be more comfortable. He's going to, you know, first time, I believe in his career that he's going to be with the same offensive coordinator for 2 consecutive seasons. Like, it's there. I mean, you know, I think he's going to do it, but it's a gut instinct, man. I'm not basing it upon anything but to say that I trust the young man's work ethic. And I think that this young man in particular gives it everything he's got. And I'm just judging the fact that this front office could have done a million things this year. What they did is they surrounded him. They surrounded him with talent. We can make the argument.
That's going to do a lot for his confidence, right?
I get that people say, Tone, that they still leveraged. They still have leverage to go get a young quarterback if they need it next year to plug into this offense. I get that. I get it. But they built pieces around Jalen with A.J. Brown and these guys. That's pieces around Jalen. So you spent some serious money against your cap for not only this year, but also for 2023. I think that Howie kind of pushed his chips in here. So I definitely think that they expect him to take that jump.
Hey, man, when you think about it from this perspective, yeah, they surround them with talent. And, yeah, sure, they hedged their bet, next year with the 2 first-round draft picks. But at the end of the day, they're a business, right? And what business, any business doesn't have a problem investing in their employee, but they're also going to make sure their business is still protected and they can still be productive, even if their employee doesn't work out, right?
Sure.
So there's nothing wrong with the way they did it. As a matter of fact, I love the way they did it because now I feel safer as an organization, as a fan base. I feel safer. I have 2 more questions for you, and then we're going to close this thing out, man. I really appreciate everything you've been providing to the show and providing to the people, man. Make sure you guys smash that like button. Make sure you guys are subscribed to my man Gate City Sports. As you guys can already tell, man, he's one of the dopest guys out here doing it. Real humble guy, real great guy, and just gives you a very realistic view of the game. You know, a lot of the chat's been talking, and you know, they really want to get your perspective on Cam Jurgens and how he relates to Tyler Linderbaum, because you know Tyler Linderbaum was supposed to be the middle of the ball at the center position, and I think the Ravens took him, correct? So, so how well, or how would you grade Cam Jurgens, that pick, and you know how would you compare him to Tyler Linderbaum, who has maybe the more upside, I guess you would say.
So everybody that was involved in the chat when it happened, they probably remember the moment where I was trying to like calm everybody down inside the chat on draft night.
Right.
Mike and Reese too. I had to calm down Philly Fresh and Philly Mike too.
Guys, man, shout out to those guys. Shout out to Philly Fresh. Shout out to the Philly Talk Podcast and Philly Mike, man. Those guys are doing great things. Shout out to them.
Yeah, Reese was like, I'm not trying to hear it, Gate. I'm not trying to hear it. But, you know, look, in terms of comparing these two young men, to start there, Tyler Linderbaum, exceptional zone blocking offensive line, does really well working up to the second level as a zone blocker. Short arms, very short arms. I will say that I do not love his first step as a pin and pull, you know, center. Pin and pull is like what you see with Kelsey, where Kelsey gets outwards and they're running that outside stuff, guys.
Kind of like that infamous pull, you know, against the Saints.
Exactly. Yeah, where Kelsey's down the field trucking 5 guys.
Right.
I didn't love Linderbaum's not the toughness, not the ability. I didn't love his initial steps and quickness off of doing that. It was it wasn't as twitchy as what you see with a Kelsey. I think that's where Cam Jurgens kind of excels. I think that's more of his game, that pin and pull game, that kind of stuff.
Oh, okay. So you were talking about Linderbaum as far as like him dragging that leg and not really being able to really get off that pin and pull.
Exactly.
Whereas Cam Jurgens, it seems like that's more of a natural motion for him.
Exactly. That's a natural movement for Cam Jurgens, personally. I will say that I think Linderbaum is a little bit more day one ready to step right in and play at a high level. I don't think Linderbaum is bad. Like I said, guys, if you're looking at a zone blocking scheme where I just need this guy to hold up and then work his way up to the second level, I think Linderbaum is very, very good at that. Arguably one of the best linemen in this entire draft class, regardless of the alignment on the offensive line at doing that. I will say that in terms of the way I viewed the pick, did I think the Eagles were going to take Cam Jurgens at 51? No, I didn't think they were going to do that. I did think that they would probably take an offensive lineman to develop somewhere in this draft. Do I hate the pick? No, I don't, especially when I see the aftermath and the after effect of getting Nakobe Dean anyways at, you know, pick, what was that, 83, I think we picked him at?
Yeah.
So, you know, no harm, no foul in my opinion when it comes to that. If you just flip those two picks, I think not everybody, there's still somebody's always going to hate something, but I think for the most part, most people would be like, hey man, that's pretty good value in these two guys. Like you got Nakobe Dean in the second, you got this kid, Cam Jurgens, you know, the future there in the third. They just kind of flipped it around. A lot of people have asked me, did I have a second round grade on Cam Jurgens? I don't like to do draft grades. I don't, because I don't know what other front offices are thinking. And valuation is relative to the value that players have it with other organizations and how much they want them. I don't know. I can't predict how other organizations, you know, saw them. I think the Eagles said that from pick 51 to pick 83, there's no way in the world we're getting this young man at 83. He's coming off the board before we pick there. We think that this is the right guy to replace Jason Kelsey. And we think that the center on our offense is just entirely too important to go with a more immediate need. The long-term need of that is just entirely too great to bank on more immediate needs.
I mean, Jason Kelsey helped pick them up.
Yeah, exactly. Now, the other side of this argument, and I've talked with a few people, and I went back through and I was like tracking it, is like, you know, Kyler, Gordon, like when you really broke down who came off the board before the Eagles picked in terms of the secondary, and then who kind of came off of the board after the Eagles picked, I would say Cam Jurgens is a better prospect than those guys. It's not that I don't think some of these dudes can't play. I was a big fan of Brian Cook. I would have loved to have Brian Cook in the, you know, as a member of the Eagles, as a future prospect at safety. I think he was a good player. Cam Jurgens is a better prospect, to be quite honest. It's tough, man, because you're assessing a long-term need that is not immediate. It's not an immediate need right now. And you could even argue there were internal solutions to the problem. Obviously, the Eagles didn't necessarily agree with that, though, versus what they perceived as being that long-term need. And quite frankly, they thought this young man would not be there when they picked in the third round. And they had him graded, I guess, over some of these secondary members and stuff that went kind of afterwards. So, I mean, it's tough. I mean, it's one of those things where you just have to record the data, guys. You got to record the data and see how their careers play out because, you know, if Britt, the young man, I think his name was Britt, the young man from Nebraska that kind of had a corner, nickel, and safety flexibility, guy could kind of play all over the secondary. If that young man turns out to be like a perennial Pro Bowler and then, Cam Jurgens turns out to be just a, starting quality, decent player, but never like Pro Bowl level, of course, those type of things would be, they would be questioned. If Brian Cook becomes some kind of crazy good Pro Bowl level safety, all you can do is track it, guys. I mean, I don't know what to say, guys. I don't get a choice in the room. They don't ask me what I think. So, I knew of the player. I knew the player was well liked, and there were definitely some early murmurs that he might go in the second round. But I can't tell you with 100% certainty that I knew without a doubt he was going in the second round. I don't know.
I feel you. Make sure you guys smash that like button. Make sure you guys subscribe to Gate City Sports. Make sure you guys subscribe to Chalk It Up Sports as well. We're really appreciative of you guys being here. Cam Jurgens, ultimately, you're right. That is a pick for the future. And when you think about the nuance of the situation, yeah, he's definitely a better prospect. He has certain traits that definitely fit what we like to do with our center. But even beyond that, I trust Jeff Stoutland to get this guy prepared. I trust Jason Kelce. Now, Jason Kelce's not a scout; he's not an evaluator, but I'm pretty sure by playing this position for as long as he has, and even being a 6th round pick or 6th or 7th round pick himself, he knows what it takes to make it at that position. Someone who's been doubted and maybe doesn't have the greatest of measurables. But I think he's in great company. For his development, he's in the best situation possible, in my opinion, for his long-term development. Let me ask you this, and we'll end it here. The schedule. What's your? I know it's kind of early, but the schedule is what it is. We know where we know who we play. We know where we play. We know when we play. So, what's your prediction for this Philadelphia Eagles schedule? For me personally, I said, okay, we were a 9-8 team last year with the schedule we played and with the components we had. I don't see why this team can't win 2 more games minimum. So I got us going 11-6 minimum.
I think it's fair. I think it's a fair expectation. I will say, I just kind of say double-digit wins, whether that's 10 wins, 12 wins, 13 wins. I can't predict how the schedule. We know preseason the schedule looks easy, but I think the Lions will be an improved football team.
Agreed. And Jacksonville, better coaching in Jacksonville. Like I believe the games we have to be mindful of, because I know a lot of people saying we need to start strong, and we should, right? But we need to be mindful. Jacksonville can be a dark horse, and they can catch us slipping. Detroit, same thing. They are a gritty city. They have a gritty head coach. They're not a team you want to go in and say, oh, we got week 1 off. You don't want to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And that's the thing is, like, I think Minnesota, it's a new coaching staff. Maybe the scheme and the system just don't match the players yet. Maybe there's a step back there, but I will say that KJ Osborne and, Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen, I mean, Kirk Cousins is a really good regular season quarterback. I mean, I'm not too sure how much playoff sniffing he's done, but it doesn't look like he sniffed it too much, to be quite honest. Regular season, they're a regular season team, and they've kind of had our number the last few times we played them. We got them in the ultimate game, which is a game that mattered, that propelled us to our first Super Bowl. And while they still sit there without a Super Bowl, I believe, and no, I think they won like Super Bowl like 2 or 3 or something. But it's been since the '60s, I think, since they won a Super Bowl. So it's been quite some time. I think we're in a good spot. Personally, I think we're in a really, really good spot. And I don't know how many wins it's going to translate to. I think that the addition of James Bradberry helps this defense out a lot. I think the addition of Nakobe Dean and Kaiser White and, guys like Hassan Reddick, who knows if Kyron Johnson, I mean, it's a 6th-round pick. I don't want to overstate or overhype what a 6th-round pick is going to be. But we've got dudes here, man. We brought in some guys to really help turn around the culture, really turn around the talent level. Because here was my thing. I think culturally, the culture of the locker room was fine. Clearly, it held together. But the talent level between us and Tampa Bay was clearly noticeable. I mean, it was very evident.
Yeah, it was distinct. You're right.
That had to be cleaned up a little bit. And I think that the front office has done a really good job of closing the gap a little bit. Now, I don't know if it's been completely closed. I don't know. I think we're in the conversation. I would stack our roster up and feel pretty confident against Dallas. And I'm not saying that like we're head and shoulders above Dallas, guys. It's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying that Dallas clearly had a far more talented roster than we did last year. And I think we're right there.
They taking a step back also.
Yeah. I'll say that the Rams have a really good roster, but they lost some pieces, we'll see. OBJ is, who knows if he's going to sign back there. I doubt it. I just don't see where the target shares would be for him. So we'll see what happens with them. Tampa Bay, I still think, has a good roster. New Orleans, I hate to say it, man, because at first I didn't see what New Orleans.
Michael Thomas, Chris Olave, Jarvis Landry, they have some weapons for Jameis Winston. Now, can Jameis Winston put it together? Still got Alvin Kamara, once he gets past his legal issues. But, man.
Yeah, I would say Green Bay. I think, those are the teams to me. Like, those are the teams to me that have the talent advantage with San Francisco. I would say, looking at, like, I'd say there's probably about 8 teams in the NFC that I think have really good rosters. The Rams, the Cardinals, the 49ers. I think Tampa Bay has a really good squad, but I don't really like the rest of the NFC South that much, to be honest. Not that outside of New Orleans, I think New Orleans, NFC South, that could be your 5 there. I think Green Bay, I think Dallas, and I think Philly. I think those are the 8 teams to me that when I look at them, I think to myself, like, those are rosters that are good enough to compete and win double-digit games if everything falls the right way for them.
So what's the litmus test game for the Eagles? What's the games that you need to see them thrive in to say, okay, we've taken that next step as a team. We've taken that next step to be able to compete on a higher level.
I don't want to say this because I don't want Dallas fans feeling like that they're the measuring stick for the Eagles. No, you're not. But you got 4 in a row on us. Got to stop that skid. We got to stop that skid. That Week 6 game, to me, needs to be of importance to the Eagles.
I agree, man. And on that note, Gates, Steve, man, really appreciate what you've been able to provide to not just the people, but provide to me, man. As a up and coming YouTuber, still, I consider myself still to be up and coming. I always try to approach this thing, just learning. And every time I talk to you, my man, I feel like I learned something new about the game. And I'm just grateful for the time that you've been able to set aside. I know we definitely went over that hour we talked about, but my man, sometimes you just gotta let the chef cook. You know what I mean? And you've been serving it up, this entire time. So I really appreciate you, my man. Is there any final words you want to give to the people before we get out of here?
Hey, man, I appreciate all y'all. There's some names in here I don't necessarily recognize, man, but I still appreciate y'all giving me some time and your attention. So I appreciate y'all, man. If you guys haven't subbed up my guy here, Tone, hey, sub him up, man. Like, real smart guy. Was one of the funnest conversations I ever had on my channel, man. We talked everything. I mean, like, we were kicking it, just talking about Allen Iverson and stuff on my channel.
Life, and all that kind of stuff. Right.
Man, it was one of the funnest conversations I had, man. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed talking to you. Like, I was like, oh, okay, like, this is a real insightful dude. He's really well thought. He's really put together. Like, you seem like you're one of those young men that's kind of got life. You're like, I got this, man. Like, I know what I want to do.
I appreciate that. It means a lot to me.
Yeah.
Like, truly, it means a lot. I just try to, I've seen a lot growing up. I've seen a lot. Had to endure a lot. And I'm just grateful that I had the opportunity to be able to have this platform and share my thoughts. Share myself with the people and be able to talk about the things we love, right? And be able to just build community and just exchange stories and just exchange energy with other YouTubers tribes. You know what I'm saying? Your tribe came together with my tribe. Like you said, there's some names you didn't really recognize in the stream. There was some names I saw I didn't really recognize, but the way we were able to come together, bring it all together like Voltron, is just really dope to me. And again, I'm always available to you anytime you want to connect. Do this YouTube thing, whatever it may be, whatever you're trying to do, roundtables, whatever. You reach out to me, you let me know, and we'll be able to make that happen without a doubt.
Yeah, man. Yeah, like I said, man, I really do appreciate you guys. For real, if you guys haven't subbed him up, man, sub him up. Like, good content, good dude. Like, hey, man, and he's a Philly native, man. Come on.
Definitely, man. But on that note, you guys, man, this has been an amazing episode of Chalk It Up Sports Daily. Man, I can't get over how great this episode was. Definitely the longest Chalk It Up Sports Daily we've had. Normally the shows goes for about an hour. We hit about an hour and 40 minutes because the conversation was just that great, you guys. And I really don't take it for granted. You guys are truly spectacular. Like I say, make sure you guys subscribe to my man, Steve Heitter, Gate City Sports on YouTube, one of the smartest men on YouTube. And on top of that, you guys, I'm your humble host, Tone DeShields II from Chalk It Up Sports, where no matter if we win or if we lose, we just got charges to the game. One love, stay humble, stay healthy, and most importantly, stay hungry. And we're out of here, you guys.